During the 19th century, the United States had many slaves. Some states even had more slaves than regular citizens. Some of these states, such as Virginia, Kansas, and South Carolina, rebelled against their leaders to fight against oppression and claim liberty. These rebellions, which were Nathaniel Turner's and John Brown's rebellion, also, last but not least, the Stono Rebellion, also known as Captain's Rebellion, which started in the Stono River, all had one thing in common, and it was to abolish slavery. All of these rebellions started in states that had slaves as the majority in their population, and they all started by small groups of people seeking slaves to join them in their battles. Nat Turner's rebellion was a rebellion that took place in Virginia in 1831. A religious leader, a Baptist minister, Turner, and a group of followers killed 60 white men, women, and children on the night of August 21. Turner and his men went on killing many more white men, so many blacks were randomly killed throughout Virginia, and some were beheaded. Those who were, their heads were left on the roads as warning to others. Nat Turner and his men went from home to home without hesitating on killing anyone. They only spared the poor white people because he believed that they thought no better of themselves than they did of Negroes. This rebellion only lasted 2 days since the white had more manpower and guns. All of the Negroes that revolted were tried and Turner escaped, but later on, October 30, a white farmer, Benjamin Phipps, discovered him in a hole covered with fence rails, and Turner was then arrested. He was tried for conspiring to rebel and making insurrection. He was later hanged in Jerusalem, Virginia. A lawyer later wrote a book about his confessions. This rebellion did not really abolish slavery. In fact, the Virginia General Assembly passed a new legislation making it unlawful to teach slaves, free blacks or mulattoes, to read and write. The General Assembly also passed a law restricting all blacks from having religious meetings without the supervision of a white minister. Despite all the negative things Turner's rebellion brought, he not only pointed to the lie that slavery was an act of goodness, institution, but also showed how white Southerners' own Christian beliefs supported his bid for freedom. Turner described his mission in his confession. The Holy Ghost had revealed itself to me, and made plain the miracles it had shown me. I had seen in the heavens. It was plain to me that the Savior was about to lay down the yoke he had borne for the sins of men, and the great day of judgment was at hand.
By this, he meant that his reason for rebellion was because a Holy Ghost told him to do so, and that the day of judgment was at his hands, and it was time to do so. It was set clear in his aftermath that his rebellion caused distortions in the United States, laws about Negroes, since it became unlawful for them to be taught to read or write, or even have religious freedom. The Stono Rebellion was the largest rebellion attached by slaves against slave owners in colonial America. The rebellion began near the Stono River in South Carolina. On September 9, 1739, early on a Sunday morning, a group of around 20 slaves assembled at the spot near the Stono River. They had pre-planned their rebellion for this day various weeks before, stopping first at firearms shop. They killed the owner and supplied themselves with guns. Later on, after supplying themselves with guns and protection, the group then continued marching down a main road in St. Paul's Parish, placed around 20 miles from Charlestown. While marching down, they were protesting by using signs such as liberty and beating drums and singing, while heading all the way down to the south of Florida. The leader of the group has always been unclear, but many sayings say that it might have been a slave named Cato or Jemmy. The band of rebels hit a series of businesses and homes, enrolling more slaves and killing the masters of their families. They burned every house that they saw in their path. The men allowed one of the slave lords at the Wallace's Tavern to live because he treated his slaves with more kindness than other slave owners. Over the next 2 years, slave uprisings occurred independently in Georgia and South Carolina, perhaps inspired, as colonial officials believed, by the Stono's Rebellion. Overall, this rebellion affected in many ways the progress in abolishing slavery throughout the United States. In addition, the legislature passed the Negro Act of 1740 to tighten controls. It required a ratio of assembling in groups, earning money, or learning to read. In the colonies, though, people still believed that whites were able to judge blacks in any way they wanted. Although all of this was still happening, the legislature also worked to improve conditions in slavery. It established penalties for masters who demanded excessive work or who brutally punished slaves. They also started a school to teach slave Christians doctrine in order to start educating them about religion. These restrictions remained in effect in South Carolina until after the American Civil War. In conclusion, the Nat Turner Rebellion and the Stono Rebellion were two very important revolts to protest against the abolishment of slavery. Therefore, even if there had been various rebellions, slavery still continued throughout America for various years after.